minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of September, which are on pages 4 to 14 of the agenda pack. These are for accuracy only, so do members have any comments they wish to make? No? Are you happy that I sign these a true and accurate record? Everybody's nodding, thank you very much. Okay, Julie, there you go. Thank you for that. Okay, Julie, do we have any apologies for this morning's meeting?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we just have the one apology from Councillor Clark.
And okay, thank you very much. And I think we also have apologies from Councillor Oliver. So if we move to item 3, urgent business, I have none. Declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest they wish to declare? No? Lovely. Non-members wishing to address the meeting? We have no? Oh, yes, well, we have our esteemed cabinet members here, which we thank you for joining us. But as you're presenting, and you're also free to comment on other items as well. So that moves us to item 6, training, standing item. I have nothing. Anyone? No? Lovely. Which moves us straight to item 7, the Q3 24-25 Strategic Risk Report. And we have with us Councillor Alison Webb, Cabinet Member, to present. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and good morning, committee members. I'm delighted to bring Q3 Risk Report to Governance and Audit today to provide an overview of the Council's risk landscape. This is the first time we have brought the risk report to you since we undertook our annual review with CMT. As a result of this review, there have been several changes to the risk register. Within the report, the most major change has been around the failure to deliver the local plan, where the risk of delivery has increased, which I think you all know about. This is relating to the pausing of the plan in September. As detailed within the latest notes in Appendix A, once a revised timescale has been agreed through the Council's Cabinet, this risk will be reassessed to reflect the changes. The other planning-related risk, nutrient neutrality, remains at the same level as the Q2 report, despite continued positive developments with regards to mitigation. Other risks within the register remain static with no movement. The waste strategy risk remains the Council's joint highest risk, and its controls still remain satisfactory due to no further guidance from central government, meaning the Council cannot implement further controls and mitigations in order to lower the risk. As always, myself and Ryan are happy to take any questions the committee has on the report. Thank you very much.
Members, you're asked to assess and comment on. So, Robert Kybird.
Thank you, Chairman. On the delivery of the local plan, is the government imposition of binding targets on housing numbers an additional risk? Do we know what the implication of a binding target would be?
So, technically, I would say at the moment it falls under the policy risk around elements of it. However, probably when we get to January, where I think there's something being brought forward to Cabinet around the local plan, we can make an assessment as to whether that's going to fall within the revised-ish local plan risk, or whether that would fall within a policy risk. So that's probably the stance as of today. So we'll wait for the announcement and then make an assessment as to which risk it will sit under.
David.
On the nutrient neutrality, we've had this as a risk now for, I think, over 2 years now, probably. And I'm just wondering, are we able to quantify in financial terms the potential risk attached to this? Because other risks have got financial consequences attached to it, and we haven't with that. Just an open question, really. we talk about impact on planning fees, impact on housing delivery, but it's not particularly quantified. Okay. I've got some more. Do you want to do that one first? Or should carry on? Yeah. Okay. And then on page, sorry, it's the same one on page 24. The penultimate line there doesn't make sense. Decisions on planning applications in those impacted areas, such as areas. And then on the waste strategy, I think similar to the local plan issue, that I understand now that that has been clarified nationally, and we do know now what the timelines are. So I guess that's just a bit of time. I think that was a recent announcement, so that's probably one for updating next time. And then on the ICT, critical breach of ICT security, we did raise this earlier in the year as a major concern, and we haven't got figures in for Q3 in terms of staff completing the training. So again, I don't know if that's a timing issue, but you know, Q3, end of October, there's no figure in there. And finally, it's just in terms of contract management, the notes there still refer to the planning service, which is, I understand, no longer a contract. Yeah. So that's just probably needs to be updated.
Shall we take them all?
Yeah.
Sorry, you might still. So in terms of the neutrality planning one, so in Q2 there was a planning shortfall of 417k. We've tried to attribute, it's a challenge to attribute stuff specifically to neutrality and stuff in terms of cost, because obviously there's a wider economic situation. Neutrality obviously affects part of the district, not the entirety of the district. So there have been attempts to do it before, but in terms of a specific figure, I probably haven't got one. In terms of the waste strategy, like I said, there have been more recent announcements around it. The challenge with that waste strategy risk at the moment, in terms of burdens funding and stuff like that, is the reason a lot of those controls are satisfactory, and the reason we can't progress with some of them, is because obviously there's a finite supply chain for some of these things, and a lot of councils are in the same position as us. There's obviously a risk around that in terms of if everyone then rushes into those supply chains as those announcements come, either with the correct information or without the correct information, there's going to be a pressure on it, and that could create a further risk around it. So that's sort of why the waste strategy is currently sat where it is. In terms of ICT critical training, that was a transition in the previous quarter around training systems, which is why we didn't have the number for that quarter. However, I think we've got the most recent number, which is the 82% off the top of my head. And contracts management and the point around neutrality, I'll take those on board and we'll make corrections around that. So just to confirm, under the contracts management one, the planning element shouldn't be in there because that is now an in-house one. And neutrality, I think what we're trying to get is obviously there's areas within Breckland that are impacted by neutrality around the two sort of catchment areas. So I think that's everything you raised. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Robert.
Just going on the ICT risk, as members we received notification that we should carry out mandatory training. Question one is, what has the uptake been on that? And question two, the training was barely fit for purpose in terms you could answer questions and the system didn't log your answers.
I can help with that. I've asked for an update. Thank you for your question. I've asked for an update of how many of our members have actually completed the training, and as yet I haven't had the figures come back. However, I will be able to update you on that at the next meeting. Regarding the training itself, yes, I've done it. It was a good reminder of what we should be doing. A lot of it is stuff you know anyhow, but there was a few bits in myself which reminded me of what I should be doing. if it's several phases. Did you, I'm going to ask, did you actually go through all the 6 elements of it? So,
So there were sort of key question elements, but the boxes didn't acknowledge that you'd completed that element. And I therefore emailed to say I had completed the element, even though the system said I hadn't.
I had exactly the same happen to me the first time I did the first one. What happens is it basically, if you don't answer the correct questions, the correct answers to the questions, then it will make you do it all over again. And that's what it is. So you have to repeat. I'll give you another opportunity. It's not like one question and then you're completely thrown out. There's another opportunity of doing it. So you have to go through the questions again before it let you to progress to the next phase, which I know some of the questions I thought I answered right, and apparently they weren't right when I checked them. So this is a lesson learned for me. So please persevere with it. There is a way through it. I know I've spoke to fellow cabinet members who also, also found a challenge, but it was a good reminder for things that we should be doing as well as members, as well as officers. You know, it's really important that we all do it, not just officers. So please persevere. Robert, if you have any problems, please come and talk to me and I can get you some help. Okay? Thank you very much.
I had a couple of things. So the waste strategy, I'm not aware that there's been any announcements. So it's good to hear that David is much more on the ball than, but if there is a timeline there, because I think that it is a huge issue. And if obviously we can't do anything because central government are messing us about. But second, the local plan, again, is central government, and there's been a lot of recent announcements. So we'll see where that takes us. And the other one, of course, which we're also waiting for, is local government review, reorganisation. Again, and I believe there's a white paper that was due out at the beginning of this month, which hasn't arrived yet. So I do appreciate there's a lot of flux, and it is the new government busy trying to flex, which has put, I think, a lot of stress in the system. And, you know, there are 3 really important things, which, you know, hopefully we'll have some clarity on by the next time that we meet. Any further comments from members? So I think that we are specifically asked to note this report. There are no changes that we've had 1 or 2 changes that David has pointed out that we've needed to have made. So subject to those amendments, are members happy that we agree? Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, so let's move us on to item 8, which is the internal audit progress report, which is on page 43 of your agendas. And we have Teresa with us. Teresa, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just pull out a few points for you. So we haven't had any more audits deferred or cancelled. You've now got 6 final reports, so there's 5 executive summaries in this report for you. They're all positive opinions, which is good. There's also a position statement on the follow-up of the business continuity and emergency planning audit, and you'll see there's still 2 recommendations that haven't been implemented that have had revised dates to the end of December. We're doing quite well, I think, at the moment in terms of getting the audits done. We've only got the cyber security now in quarter 1 and 2, which is still in progress. That is almost now at the draft report stage. So next time we meet, you should have that final report as well. The accounts receivable is slightly behind, but again, you know, overall I think we're getting into quite a good position now with progress with the audits. In terms of the outstanding recs, not much has changed there. We've just got another 3 that have been added, but you know, 18 is quite a low outstanding number, albeit 1 or 2 might be old. Happy to take any questions.
Members of the committee, over to you. David.
I think it was at the last meeting, Chair, where we expressed concern about the asset management outstanding audit. Is there any update on that from 2019?
Yeah, thank you. There is an update on that. It has just been adopted at our last full council meeting. So, and the next report that will be cleared off.
The others, Chair, are just all about timing, really. So on page 56, we've got a couple there which were due to be completed by November. And then we go on to, right the way down, there are, so on page 66, for example, the waste management, that was agreed to be extended to September. Is there any update on that? Has that now been met? And then private sector housing, similarly.
So I'm happy we take them one at a time.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
that might be easier for everyone.
Yeah, I can answer on the waste one, and that one hasn't moved. We are reliant, unfortunately, on another third party. So we've done as much as we can on that. And in fact, one of the other parties has two. But until Kings Lynn have decided whether they can sign it off or not, that one, I'm afraid, will sit there. But we do continue to sort of liaise with them to see where they're at and whether they will sign off. And there may come a point where we just decide to remove that recommendation if we can't get to a resolution with all three parties.
So then we've got private sector housing, end of October. Contracts and procurement, again, that was due early October.
I can help with the contracts and procurement one, and on the public sector housing, we'll go back and look at that and let you have a response by email. So on the procurement and contracts one, both of those are ready to be cleared off now. The spend analysis, we've had the first 2 quarters of this year completed and done. So that will, when you get the next report, that one will have gone. And the same with the risk one. So those will both be closed off by next time.
Bit broken record here, really. Key controls and assurance, that was due at the end of October, as was payroll and HR.
And on the key controls and assurance, we are now fully staffed in the team, and there's been more systematic following up of debtors after the automated process. So managers, service managers are being emailed and chased if there are outstanding debts. So we think that's that recommendation will be, when it's reviewed again, will be marked as implemented.
Again, I'm sorry, I don't know that one off the top of my head. We'll have to come back to you on that one too.
Sorry. On the payroll, we did. There was an amendment to the payroll system so that expensive claims couldn't be submitted without the VAT receipt being attached. So we're hoping that will increase the compliance of staff in providing the fuel receipts. So that's been in operation for 2 or 3 months now. So I think that should improve the situation.
So is it that the report is not up to date?
I think some things have moved on, yes.
Teresa?
I think there's also a little timing difference because we have the meeting and then you get the report deadline from when we have to get the papers in.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore we give everyone else a deadline before that to do the bit. So I think there's almost unfortunately a 2-week gap where things might have happened since that time, and the evidence is now there. But obviously, with the paper deadlines and the deadlines we give people for the work, things might have got missed. But I don't know how we address that unless we try and do some sort of, I don't know.
Well, I think we probably need to have an update for the meeting. So if the report arrives and it's no longer accurate, we probably need to start saying, here's the report, but in the last 2 weeks, the following things have happened, and we'll give you a verbal update so that the committee are dealing with the latest. So, I mean, I think we ought to do that. And I think just as a matter of interest, to highlight the areas that have gone past their date, because what we would want by the meeting is an action point, which involves what's still outstanding. Do we need to change the date, or do we need to call in the executive director who's responsible for that action to explain why the action hasn't been delivered by the date that was agreed that it should be delivered by. So I do think that the points that David is raising are really moot. They're important to the integrity of the process. David.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it, Chair, and particularly in terms of asset management, which we did minute at the last meeting, concern. So it would have been helpful to have had an update on that. The final one is corporate health and safety, where we had a due date of the 1st of November.
Again, I'll provide a written update, but we have been doing a lot of work in this area, the management team. So I don't know if it's completely finalised yet, but certainly there's a lot of work in progress. So I'll include that in the update and email.
Lovely, thank you. And I've got Robert next.
Thank you, Chairman. My first question is, the health and safety audit, does that include an assessment of outside contractors' health and safety knitting in with our policy requirements? And my second question on private sector housing, is that looking at the efficiency of what we have to do on a statutory basis, or does it look at private sector housing compliance with legislation?
So I'm pretty sure that the corporate health and safety audit is about corporate health and safety within the council. I don't think we would get involved in the contractor side of that.
I think under health and safety law, I am a health and safety professional, you have a statutory duty to ensure that your contractors comply.
I'm pretty sure that wasn't in the scope of this audit. That's not to say it couldn't have been in the scope, or it can't be in the future, but I'm fairly certain it wasn't. I can check, but I'm fairly certain it wasn't in this scope. So I can always confirm that. In terms of the private sector housing, I'm fairly certain they audit against what legislation says in terms of what the council should be doing. And that's how they do that audit.
So should the private sector housing team produce some kind of annual report on the levels of compliance within the private sector, within Breckland?
I think that is an enormous question to ask, isn't it? Because there is legislation for landlords to comply, and so really what you're saying is that if we are paying the rent on behalf of somebody, we pay the rent to the person, not the landlord, don't we? So therefore, yes, do we have a responsibility, or is that dealt with elsewhere? So I wouldn't necessarily suggest, I mean, I would take advice on that. On whether we should be. I'm not keen for us to embark on a whole load of expense that, as a council, we're not.
Okay, to improve understanding, could we have be sent a copy of the work schedule for that audit?
Are you on?
Yes.
I think if members of the committee would like that, or would you like to meet independently? And I think in a more timely way, Robert, if you were to meet and then if it's an issue, we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting. But if it's not an issue, then it doesn't need to come back. How about that? Would that be an action we could take away?
So just to clarify, Chair, then if I send you I can send you the terms of reference for the audit, which will tell you what the scope of the audit was, and I can send you the final report, which will give you the exec summary and all the findings, and then you let me know if that's enough or if there's any other detail you need outside of that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from any other members? Okay, members. I think we have Teresa. Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to item 9, which is the audited statement of accounts 23-24. And Matthew, over to you, sir. Or unless Phil would like to say something.
Not yet, Chairman.
No.
I will in due course.
At the last committee, you, Anthony Young came and gave you an update on the progress of the audit and the audit findings. Really, and that was in September, really nothing fundamental has changed in terms of the audit since then. They've been continuing doing some testing, but at a much lower level because they've done the bulk of the work by September. So this report really just summarises the impact on the accounts from their findings to date, and you can see on page 77 of your report the list of changes that have been made. But as I've just said, really those changes were already reported to the committee in September, and nothing has really changed since then. The important thing in terms of the finances of the council that there's been no findings that affect our level of usable reserves or the general fund. So there's no impact from the audit on those. There have been a couple of changes to the balance sheet, and those are around the pension valuation, which was reported. We received the final pension valuation in October from the pension fund, which is just a normal time of year when we get the final valuation. So that has been a change in the pension valuation, which actually increased our the scheme assets by just under 600,000. So that was a positive change. And then the other larger change on the balance sheet was the valuation of Michael Monument Court, which was reported last time to the committee, where the valuation was amended by just over 200,000. But that doesn't impact on usable reserves. That impacts on the revaluation reserve, which is not a reserve that we access.
Lovely. Members, comments or questions? So I've got Robert and then David.
Given there's no significant movement from the last meeting, we still need to formally go through the recommendations.
Yep, no, I'm aware of that. David.
I guess this is another matter of timing, really, but on the strategic risk table on page 96 and 97, the scores on the doors don't match the scores that we've just gone through in terms of our risk register.
They won't. So because this is the accounts to the end of March 2024, then they will be different, and they'll remain different because we're still moved on.
Any other comments or questions before we go to the recommendations? Cabinet Member.
Thank you so much. Towards the end of last month, and I think it's appropriate at this moment in time to make this statement, towards the end of last month there was a bit of hiatus in the national press, to put it that way, about how government weren't going to be able to sign off any accounts this year because councils are being dilatory in preparing their accounts. I am absolutely delighted to say that this council is a pathfinder, a beacon of hope for those local authorities that actually can't do their job properly. This council have submitted everything on time. We're in the very small percentage of councils around the country, and it's not down to me. I'm the spokesperson today, We've got a team here at Breckland in the finance department who know what they're doing. They do it well, and they do it without any challenges at all internally. Our 21-22 accounts were produced and signed off in full. The 22-23 accounts were produced by the deadline, but unfortunately the government's own appointed advisors, Ernst Young, weren't able to finish their job in time because they seemed to be overworked. And similarly, our 23-24 accounts were produced by the deadline of the 31st of May, and again, of course, not because of us, but because Ernst & Young have not been able to undertake their work in a timely manner either. So I just want to make members of the committee aware that our finance team, in producing our accounts, produces them in a proper and workmanlike manner. And it is not due to any problems that we have here that our accounts sometimes appear not to be audited. Our accounts are signed off, and the wording is quite clear. When Ernst & Young signed them off, they're quite content. They have a modified opinion. And for those of you who are familiar with accountancy terminology, that's a pretty good opinion to note. They just can't sign them off because they can't finish the work. It's as simple as that. So I just want to pay credit to the finance team here who actually do the job properly. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I would like to support what the Cabinet members just said. And there are issues with the procurement of local government audit, which Ernst & Young have got, which are no fault of Breckland's. But I was astonished to read in the press that there are some councils who haven't managed to sign off their accounts for up to 5 years, which I find horrifying, but there you go. And some of them are in Norfolk as well. So anyway, we've always prided ourselves on our financial probity here at Breckland, but I do appreciate the comments and the congratulations to the team that we are, I think, in a less single figures percentage of councils who are as far forward with the audits. So I think that does represent something that we should be acknowledged. Okay, so we have on page 76 of your agendas some recommendations which I'm going to read. So I'm going to move them, and then when I've read them out, if I could have a seconder, I'd be very grateful. So the first recommendation is subject to the finalisation of the audit accounts by Ernst & Young, the Governance and Committee resolves as follows. A, to approve the financial statements of the Council as presented, having taken account of the external auditor's findings, to authorise the Chairman of the Governance and Audit Committee to sign and date the financial statements once the auditors have completed their outstanding procedures and provided their audit completion report, on the basis that no material audit differences are identified. If those procedures identify any material audit difference which would require adjustment to the financial statements, the Governance and Audit Committee would be notified and updated accordingly, and a new motion to approve the revised financial statements made at the next available Governance and Audit Committee meeting. B, to approve the annual governance statement 23-24 as presented, having taken account of the external auditor's findings. To authorise the Chief Executive and Leader to sign and date the annual governance statement once the auditor has completed their outstanding procedures, on the basis that no material audit differences have been identified or are expected. And C, to authorise the Chairman of Governance and Audit Committee to approve the Letter of Representations 23-24. Do I have a seconder for that? Robert, thank you very much. All in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed.
Robert, just to clarify, that is a delegated authority to this committee. It doesn't. This is a resolution. This is not a recommendation to council.
Yeah. It doesn't say that in the...
No, I'm just clarifying.
Okay. Right. Matthew.
Just to clarify that the procedure we expect is it will be the same as we did with the 22-23 accounts. So as soon as I get the audit completion report from Ernst & Young, I will be sending that round the committee as I did last time. So you will then need to respond that you're either happy with it or you raise any issues that you've got with the chair. And once you've done that, then they can sign off the account. So like I said, that I expect that to be sometime in February.
Okay, well, that's when we have our council tax setting meeting, isn't it?
Well, it will be done by email as well.
Okay.
Just to be aware of it.
Okay, so we move on to item 11, the Treasury Management Policy and Strategy. And Robert, you'll be pleased to note that this is a recommendation to full council. Oh, sorry, have I jumped an item? No, right, you're quite right. I have turned over 2 pages on my thing rather than just one. So if we move to item 10, which is on page 196. Treasury Management Mid-Year Report 24-25. Councillor Cowan.
Well, Chairman, as is the norm with this wonderful piece of documentation we have before us, it's really not mine. It's not really. It certainly isn't mine. I'm not that clever with the figures and the financial projections. So on my right, as you've already indicated, Matthew is going to take you through this report, and then we'll deal with the recommendations afterwards.
Matthew, over to you.
I think really just to summarise the position for the first half of the year, interest rates have begun to fall, but they haven't fallen quite as quickly as we'd anticipated when we set the original Treasury Management strategy. So we have been able to get a return in the first half of the year of 5.4% on our cash investments. We've also benefited from the fact that we've received a number of grants, thinking particularly of the Local Authority Housing Fund grant and grant towards capital costs of implementing food waste, which will be spent, but they weren't spent. The timing was that they weren't spent in the first half of the year, so we've had more cash to invest. So the funds at the end of September that we had invested were around £31 million. So the combination of having more funds to invest and the fact that interest rates haven't fallen as fast as we thought meant that we've been able to exceed the budget that we set for interest on our Treasury investments. So we're currently forecasting that we'll get around £1.8 million worth of interest in this financial year. You'll see on page 213 of the report the forecast from our Treasury Management advisors in terms of interest rates, and again that confirms that interest rates, although they are still expected to reduce, they are falling rather more slowly than we'd anticipated when we set the strategy. Happy to take any questions.
Members, over to you. Robert.
So those, the link group forecasts, are they what are used in calculating the forward budget?
Yes.
Well, that's a nice succinct response, wasn't it? Any other comments? Okay.
Chairman, if I may as well, just jump in. It is good news, ironically, that interest rates have held up for this council for this council in particular, because as Matthew's explained, it has enabled us to receive a greater return on the capital invested that we've been able to put out there. Regrettably, or thankfully, that extra income has helped to support the rising costs that this council faces, which are such a challenge for many around the country, and not least our temporary housing costs. So whilst it's a blessing in disguise, effectively, because it's enabling us, as I say, to underpin and support some of those services which are absolutely vital to people in our community. And by the same token, it's enabling us to continue to support in those services, those individuals, those local communities for whom we provide discretionary grant payments and the like. So it is a fact of life that our costs are increasing, but because we have the availability of that cash, to sit out there in the market earning a reasonably good rate of interest, we're able to help residents in Breckland. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, it is unusual to have a council with no external borrowing. And I know that some other councils out there are similar size to us, like Norwich City Council. The figures are vast, tens of millions of pounds. So the very fact that higher interest rates means that we aren't spending more of our taxpayers' money on interest rates, but we are benefiting is good. It's very unusual in local government to be in that position. Thank you. In the absence of any other comments, we have two recommendations for item 10 on page 196. To note the actual prudential indicators for April to September 2024 within this report, and to note the Treasury Management mid-year report for 2024-25 at Appendix A, and I think we've done that, so thank you very much indeed. Okay, so we now move to item 11, which I got to so excited about. I got there a bit early, but here we are. So the Treasury Management Policy and Strategy 25-26. Now, members, Appendix E of this report contains private and confidential information. So if you want to discuss the contents of Appendix E, we will have to go into closed session. If you are happy that you've had a chance to read it and you have no questions for the open session, I'm happy to take the whole item 11 in open session and not to go into private session. But it is up to the members of the committee. Members, are you happy that we discuss the matter in open forum, which means we can't refer to the contents of Appendix E, just to the main papers? Are members happy that we do that? We are. Okay, so there's no need for us to go into confidential session. So in that case, Councillor Cowan, back to you.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to do the usual hospital pass on this one. As you'll appreciate, there's an awful lot of technical stuff in here. But before we go through it, I just want to make one comment, and that is, of course, that on the 19th of this month, we will be learning the outcome of the government settlement. Well, we hope we will anyway. I know the team here are hoping they're going to get it on the 19th. Otherwise, they're going to have a very different Christmas. We're going to get the settlement from central government on the 19th. Now, normally one would never expect a settlement to contain information which is going to derail anything that we're discussing in this particular paper here. But as we've seen already this year, there is a tendency for things to creep out the woodwork and the small print to be a little bit more than just small print. But I am advised that if in the eventuality that anything does arise as a consequence of the settlement, that there will be plenty of time prior to the due deadline next year for us to bring this back in one form or another, should there be a need for that. So with that proviso, I'm going to pass straight on to Matthew on my right. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. In terms of the strategy, I'll just draw committee members' attention to really what has changed since last year. The broad strategy is really unchanged. What has changed is, if you look at on page 229 of your report and table 4, now this is based on the capital programme as it currently stands. Table 4 shows that we will have a negative capital financing requirement for the next 2 years. The implication of that under the government regulations is that we don't have to set aside our revenue budget, any of our revenue budget, the minimum revenue provision, to repay debt. But we've taken a very prudent approach in setting the budget, and we are setting aside just under £1 million worth of revenue provision in the budget for next year. But because the capital finance requirement is negative, that's classed as what is called a voluntary revenue provision, so it's not a statutory requirement that we do that, but we're doing it in order to make sure that we're repaying all our debt over a reasonable period of time. And you'll see from table 4 the capital finance requirement does go up in subsequent years, that's mainly due to the purchase of waste vehicles as those come to the end of their life, and that's particularly in 26, 27. But that we, through setting aside revenue, we bring the capital financing requirement back down to a negative position by 2032, 33. So we repaid the debt that we built up through the capital program. The main other change in the report is on page 2331, and this reflects the fact that the government in April produced updated guidance on minimum revenue provision, on what needs to be included in the policy statement that is has to be approved every year. So you'll see it's a much longer statement than in previous years, and that's particularly around the implementation of the new accounting standard IFRS 16, which relates to how we treat leases, where we're leasing assets. Those leases from the 1st of April 2024 need to go onto our balance sheet, and therefore we need to make set aside MRP in relation to those assets. But the essence of the policy is to allow us to then or to explain really that the impact actually on the revenue budget is nil from making that change, but we need to do it just in terms of complying with accounting standards and the guidance. I think I'll just leave it there for questions. Really.
Okay. Members, over to you. Comments and questions. Robert.
So just to understand the financing of the waste vehicles, I think we acted as the leasing finance body. Is that correct?
So we purchased those vehicles using capital, yes. They're not leased. We are doing an exercise for the future just to double check that purchasing outright is the most, gets the best value for money rather than leasing them. But at the moment, all the waste vehicles are owned by the council.
And if I can, Chairman, this was a decision that was taken some time ago, of course, and it was at the time the most cost-effective way for us to undertake our waste contract. And if you recall, that waste contract was the first which linked the three councils together. So it was quite a novel way of undertaking waste services anyway, and we were able to cross boundaries. So that at the time that we took this original decision, it was without doubt the most cost-effective way. But as is the case, as Matthew said, with any procurement that we undertake, we want to make sure we're still doing the right thing at the right time. And if I can just nuance this a little bit as well, I know it's not my portfolio, but we do know that there are changes coming to the waste policy, food collection, for example, and whether or not we rather hope we'll still be able to commingle all our recycling waste in this district, because there are other implications elsewhere. But until the final details, as you rightly said, Chairman, are announced for the waste collection of waste generally for local authorities, we won't know. And it might be that when we get to that point in time, that actually purchasing vehicles might not be the most appropriate way forward, but it might be a different route that's proposed. So at this moment in time, all we can say is we've done the right thing thus far, and we will continue to do the right thing. Thank you.
Robert.
So for clarification, is this an assumption that the entire fleet will be replaced in 26, 27? And would an alternative to look at to be to extend the lifetime of that fleet?
The majority, not all the fleet will replace in 26, 27. The majority of it will be. Some of the vehicles that were bought slightly later will only need replacing in 28, 29. But the majority will be bought. But those in 27, by 26, 27, they will be getting towards the end of their useful useful life and quite a lot to maintain them if we were going to go in future years. So it's the right time to replace.
Okay. I mean, the tension between local and central government as such, but you know, waste is a prime example where you know, they just let us get on with doing what we do. We would be able to deliver in a much more cost-effective way and one that's responsive to the particular issues in our area. And I have to say, it's immensely frustrating that governments of both colours have decided that they want to interfere in this area and cause all this extra expense and uncertainty, which is ultimately paid for by the residents. I share the Cabinet members' frustration, but we are where we are, and there are some things we can control and some things that we can't. So I do appreciate that. Members of the committee, any comments or questions? Okay, so we have a series of recommendations to full council, and they are on page 218 of your agendas, and I will just quickly canter through those. And then I'll need a seconder so that we can move them. So we agreed to recommend to full council, 1, that the Treasury Management Strategy 25-26 to 27-28 at Appendix A is approved. 2, that the minimum revenue provision MRP statement contained within Appendix A, which sets out the council's policy on MRP, is approved. 3, that the prudential and local indicators and limits contained within Appendix A and brackets tables 1 to 11 close brackets are approved. 4, that the investment strategy for 25-26 Appendix B and the detailed criteria included in Appendix B1 is approved. And 5, that the Treasury Management Policy at Appendix B2 is also approved. Do I have a seconder for that? David. Thank you. All in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Okay, thank you. So that takes us on to item 12, which is the work programme. A copy of the work programme is on page 274 of your agendas. Do I have any comments or questions on that? And that includes officers as well, if there's anything that you wish to amend. No? Okay. In that case, we move on to item 13. So after Christmas next year, so the next meeting is on the 27th of February 2025 at 10 a.m. in this room. As we're not going to exclude the press and public, then items 14 and 15 fall. So I therefore close the meeting. Thank you all very much.